What's up, YouTube? I want to do a video about disc golf terminology. I wanted to explain some of these terms, so if you encounter them either in my videos or other disc golf videos or maybe some articles out there, you'll understand what they mean, and it won't be a hindrance to you in your progression of learning the game of disc golf. This will probably be a pretty long video, also probably be somewhat visually uninteresting, mostly a verbal video with me showing you these words and showing you some examples of what I'm talking about, using some discs as well, but really not a whole lot to look at on this one. It's just going to be a pretty information-based video, but hopefully it'll help you guys out and clear up some of these terms for you. So the first subsection there are the basic types of discs. So I'm going to try to be quick about all this stuff, but it's still going to take me some time. So the first one is putter. This is a putter. This is an MVP anode, one of my favorite putters. And the putter is the slowest disc in the arsenal. It is the most accurate and controllable as well. It requires the least amount of arm speed and throwing ability to maximize its potential. I use putters for anything I think I can reach the basket from where I'm standing with a putter. I'll throw a putter, pretty much, whether that's from the tee or anywhere in between the tee and the basket. Also, the putter is what you're going to use when you get close to try to actually make it into the basket. That's where you're going to use the putter for. But the putter is extremely accurate, very slow, and very useful off the tee, both on shorter holes and where your first shot placement is critical. You can throw a putter that's very accurate and make sure you land in the zone that you want to be in. The next step up from that is a mid-range. This is a mid-range. You can see it's a little bit sharper, more aerodynamic, which translates to more speed and therefore more distance potential. So you step up to a mid-range if you feel like you need to go a little bit farther with your throw. Mid-range is also a fantastic tool off the tee because you can get most of the distance of a driver and still maintain a huge amount of controllability and accuracy with a mid-range. So mid-range is a great blend between distance and accuracy. So mid-range is a very effective tool. Next step up will be a fairway driver. This is your first speed class of drivers, which is above mid-ranges. You can see they're quite a bit sharper, more aerodynamic, which translates to more speed again, and therefore more distance potential. Really, the only difference between these discs, as far as what you want to use them for, and very much in brief, is that you just use the next step up when you need to go a little bit farther. Fairway drivers, in general, will have a pretty small rim compared to distance drivers, which I'll show you next. Therefore, they're still quite accurate. They're not as difficult to throw. They don't require as much arm speed to maximize their potential. So fairway driver is a great way to get distance off the tee and also still maintain accuracy and control. The next step up from that is your distance driver. These are your fastest discs. They have the most distance potential, although your average amateur, in my experience, can throw fairway drivers about as far as they can throw distance drivers, because when you have a disc like this that's so sharp, has such a wide rim, and so much speed potential, you need to be able to throw it with a lot of speed to make that, to maximize its potential. So if you don't have the arm speed to throw a fast disc at the speed it wants to fly, you're probably not going to get the most use out of it. So mostly, really high-speed discs are used for people, are used effectively by people that have really good arm speed and proper form and stuff like that. So there are your basic types of discs. Next subset right there is the wing and the nose of the disc. Right, so you're gripping the disc here. It's going to be difficult to show you. Gripping the disc here, the opposite side of where you're gripping, which would be over here, is the wing. The wing is the way you control the angle of release. Alright? The nose of the disc, if you're holding it here, would be this front edge. So if you throw with the nose up, it'll cause the disc to kind of stall out, go higher up in the air, stall out, and fall out. If you throw with the nose down, you know, you can get it to carry longer and straighter that way. So if you hear somebody saying make sure you keep the nose down on a throw, that's what they're talking about. They're talking about keeping that lead edge pointed down slightly so you don't get too much air underneath your disc, making it fall out of the air. So the next subsection is different types of throws, starting with Hyzer and Anhyzer. A lot of people think that Hyzer is a shot that goes left, Anhyzer is a shot that goes right. That is not the case. What that means is, again, is working with wing angle, right? So here's your wing. A Hyzer is when you throw and release with the wing down. Therefore, if you're throwing a stable disc, it'll produce a Hyzer shot, going straight and then veering left. Anhyzer is the opposite, where you throw with the wing up. This will generally produce a shot that flies to the right for a right-handed backhand, will fly to the right for some period of time. The next one is a Hyzer Flip. Hyzer Flip is performed with a somewhat understable disc, where you throw it down on a Hyzer, but allow its natural turn to pop it up straight, or even, you know, to varying different angles. So if you threw the disc flat, you know, it's so understable that it would kind of turn to the right and glide out to the right. You throw it down on a Hyzer, allowing that natural turn to pop it up straight, or even pop it up into a turnover, but that will extend the flight because it takes longer for it to pop up and either turn over or ride a little bit and come back. Or if you throw a Hyzer Flip perfect for just a straight shot, you can get a disc to flip up flat and just carry straight down the fairway from that angle. So if I don't have understable and overstable on here, I have a very comprehensive video on those two different words, what they mean. Too much to go into in the middle of this video. If you're interested in those words, understable, overstable, and what those all mean, some of these other things will be explained in that video as well. Highly recommend going and check that one out. The next one is a spike Hyzer. That is a really exaggerated Hyzer shot, generally thrown up and over an obstacle where it'll go up high and spike down on a very exaggerated Hyzer angle. Again, mostly used to go up and around stuff, or if you really want your disc to come in and hit the ground and really dig into the ground, not skip, and stay close to where it lands. So that's a spike Hyzer. A turnover generally is with you know, an understable disc that is either so understable you throw it flat, it'll turn, or a disc that you throw with Anhyzer where it turns to the right and it never comes back. So, you know, it stays going right all the way over. And you turn a disc over, you turn it up, you use that natural turn to make it fight out to the right and never come back. So that's that. What do we got next there? A roller disc, a roller shot, when you throw your disc in such a manner that it lands on the ground on, you know, an angle sort of like that, and therefore it rolls down the fairway on the ground. Generally used to go underneath low-hanging limbs and stuff like that, or you know, I'm not very well versed with rollers, but generally that's when people will use them. If you need to carry a lot of distance but you don't have a lot of room in the air, you throw a roller because it'll land and roll across the ground rather than fly underneath trees and stuff like that. Okay, a flick or a sidearm is you're holding the disc kind of like this, and you're throwing it, rather than a backhand where you're throwing this way, you're throwing it the other way. It's definitely interesting to film it. So you're throwing it this way. This puts the complete opposite spin on a disc than with a backhand. So if you throw a right-handed backhand, it'll naturally go out and finish to the left. With a flick, it'll naturally go out. A right-handed flick will naturally go out and finish to the right. So generally people that can throw both backhand and forehand will basically switch those two different things. You know, if they need to go right, rather than throw a turnover, like we discussed, they'll throw a flick, which will carry to the right naturally. Flick roller is the same kind of thing, where you're using the same grip as a flick, but you're throwing it again to make it land on the ground and roll down the fairway. A tomahawk is also the same grip as a flick or a sidearm, which is this is my cheesy flick grip. I'm not very good with flick, but where you throw it overhand shot, almost like you're throwing a baseball. This will cause kind of a spiraling throw high up through the air, that can also be quite effective in snaking through tunnel shots and stuff for guys that are really adept with these type of throws. I really only use tomahawks to get out of trouble or to go up and over an obstacle, generally. A thumber is very similar to a tomahawk, where you're throwing it like a baseball, but you're gripping it with your thumb on the inside of the disc. You can either do like a trigger pull on the index finger, or sometimes I've seen people put their index finger flat across like that. There's different grips, but basically you have the thumb in there. That causes an opposite. It's basically the same correlation from backhand to flick is with tomahawk and thumber, where I believe tomahawks will finish left and thumbers will finish right. I could be wrong. I think I'm right on that, but I could be wrong. Next one is a layup. Very simple. Basically, a layup means you're not trying to make it into the basket. You're just trying to put it very close, so you get your, so you're in on the next shot and you move on. Generally, I lay up a lot. It depends on who you are. A lot of people will try to make it in whenever they think they can. I generally, if it's not a high percentage putt, I'll lay up because I would rather take the shore, make sure I get it in 2 shots than try to get it in the shot I'm throwing then and possibly risk another stroke there. So that's my philosophy, but that's a layup, very simple. A putt is within a certain circle around the basket. It is a 10-meter circle, and when you're inside that circle, you have to maintain balance throughout your entire putt. So you can't fall forward, you can't step past where your line is. You need to make sure you're behind the disc. So here's say this is your disc, you got to make sure you're behind it, and you stay behind it for the whole throw. You release the disc, it hits the basket, you need to maintain balance for a second, and then you're done with your shot. If you fall forward, or step forward or anything like that, you could be called on a falling putt or a foot fault. Therefore, I think generally you'll have to re-putt, and then if you get a warning for it, you could lose strokes in like a penalty or a tournament situation rather. A jump putt is when you're basically putting, but you're outside of that circle. Therefore, you can fall forward. So you either jump while you propel the disc outward, or there's also like a fall or a step putt, like a step through putt, where you take a step and you release the disc right at the end of that step and it flies out towards the basket. This is a way for you to basically use your putting motion, which is extremely accurate, hopefully at least, and still kind of get a little bit extra distance on it to try to make it into the basket from outside that 10-meter circle. Therefore, it's legal. So, if you're teeing off or you're throwing through the fairway, you can release and step through, and your weight's coming. You can fall, release and then fall off the tee pad. It's completely legit, and most people end up off of the tee pad after their release, or a lot of people end up off the tee pad after they release on a drive, and that's completely legitimate because you're out, you're outside of that circle that we talked about with your putting, where you have to maintain balance. So the next two are just the basic types of headwind and tailwind. Headwind is wind that's coming into your face. Tailwind is wind that's coming from behind you. Generally, if you're throwing a disc into a headwind, it's going to act more understable. Therefore, you see a lot of people use overstable discs to throw into the wind, because they will carry a little bit straighter into that wind, and they're less susceptible to being forced to turn over by the wind and that force on the disc. The tailwind is the opposite, where it'll actually make your disc act a little bit more overstable, so you can throw something a little more understable and rely on the wind to kind of travel it down towards the left as it goes down the fairway. For putting, generally a headwind will lift your disc up slightly, so you want to aim a little bit lower, and for tailwind it will lift your disc up. It'll knock your disc down, so you want to aim a little bit higher. So, and that's the same for anything. You can throw a lower shot into a headwind than a tailwind. If you throw real low, off a tee with a tailwind, a lot of times it'll slap you right down towards the ground, and it'll sacrifice some distance. So for tailwinds, you want to give it a little bit more height. Headwind, you want to throw a little bit lower for putts and for throws. The next few is snap, which is basically, you hear about snap a lot in regards to distance. Snap is that snap of your wrist on release that helps propel the disc, rip the disc out of your fingers, and put spin on that disc. So even if you have really great form, if you don't have very much snap, or your form doesn't help you provide snap onto the disc, it'll be difficult for you to really reach large distance ranges. The people that throw the farthest have good snap and good form, where good form can get you decent distance and good snap alone can get you decent distance, but it's the combination of those two things that really produce a really big power thrower. So snap, generally you want a little bit of a curl to your wrist, and then it snaps out, therefore ripping the disc off your fingers and providing spin. So the next couple ones are different types of grip, two basic grips. Power grip, which is all four fingers on the inside of the rim some way, whether you tuck them or just, you have some pretty flat, but generally you want at least a few of them tucked, and then maybe I like to do sometimes with my pinky flat or tucked in. I've been experimenting with a lot more power grips lately. Then you want your thumb to meet with your index finger, but for me, I have these huge hands, and I've kind of been experimenting with making my you can kind of see it line up there, where my index finger is actually more kind of meeting, squishing the flight plate in between that and my palm. Something I'm experimenting with, but yeah, power grip basically is to have all these four fingers on there on the bottom. Now fan grip, which is the next one, is where you fan out your fingers a little bit more, like that. This is generally used for mid-ranges and putters, and it's more of an accuracy grip, where the power grip is more used for raw distance. So I have a complete video on grips if you want a little bit more detail on that. And then I believe the last one on this little subsection is X-step. Now the X-step is something you'll see most players do, where it's during your run-up, you'll generally step one small step with your left foot, then a large step with your right, then the left foot will come back behind your right foot, kind of producing an X, and then from there you'll step out with your right, plant, and that's where you're actually accelerating through with your throw. Difficult for me to explain based on this, but probably 99% of the players you'll see out there, especially at the higher levels of the game and like tournament footage on YouTube and stuff like that, they're pretty much all throwing X steps for distance. The opposite of that would be a standstill, where you're just, you lean back, lean forward, you're still transferring your weight, but you're throwing without moving your feet at all. And then a couple other ones, very simple: ace, birdie, eagle, par, and OB. I think that's the end of it. So an ace is a hole-in-one. So you throw from the tee, go straight in the basket. Pretty much the best feeling in disc golf as far as I'm concerned. I only have a few, but they're amazing memories, and it's super fun to actually get an ace. Anyone who's actually canned an ace, they're just the best. So an ace, hole-in-one. A birdie is one stroke under par, so it will be a 2 for a par 3. An eagle is 2 strokes under par, so if it was a par 3, an ace would be an eagle as well. If it's a par 4, it would be a 2. Par 5, it would be a 3. And par is when you throw exactly as many strokes as are designated par for that hole. Par 3, you make it in the basket in 3 throws. All that's pretty simple. And the final one is OB, which is when your disc lands in an area on the course designated as out of bounds. The entire disc has to be laying out of bounds. So say, your disc is, this is the out of bounds line, your disc is laying like this, you're in bounds. Your whole disc has to be outside, the entire disc has to be in the out of bounds area. Even if you have the tiniest bit on the line, generally you're in bounds. When your disc is out of bounds, it costs you a stroke, or other penalties depending on the tournament, but generally it'll cost you a stroke. You need to come back in bounds to the last place where your disc was inbounds. And then that is one of the few times that you need a mini marker disc, which is just a smaller miniature disc that you use to mark your place, is to mark where you are when you come back in from out of bounds. So that's one of the, that is one of the few instances where you need to have a mini to play like a sanctioned tournament. Also, if you want to pick up your disc and use it again, you can't mark that place with another disc. You have to mark it with a mini. So that's another quick tip there. But without a bounds, if your disc is, you know, like that, it's only partially out of bounds, you're good. You can come in. I usually use like three lengths of my foot, so I'll do 1, 2, 3, mark your disc, mark your lie from there, and you're safe to throw from there. Because if you're standing out of bounds when you throw, there's a penalty stroke for that. And so you need to be standing completely inbounds when you throw. Therefore, if your disc is partially out of bounds, like we talked about, you can move it back inbounds safely, and then take your spot from there, your lie from there, and your next throw. So that is all the different disc golf terminology I could think of. If you guys think of anything that I missed that you want me to clarify, of course, you can just leave me a comment. I'll get back to you guys, and I'll leave the information in there, and so we can add any other terms to this video, make it a little bit more comprehensive. But hopefully that kind of sums up the real important ones, the most likely ones you're going to run into out there on the course. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Listening to me talk for 20 minutes. Hopefully you learned something from this. And I really appreciate the support of all my videos and my channel. You guys are amazing. Wouldn't do it without you. So thanks a lot, guys. Cheers.